It is a beautiful fall evening here in Northwest Georgia. The sun has just set, but we do still have some daylight out, so I'm taking advantage of that right now. According to my smartphone, anyhow, it is 68 degrees out here. Just a beautiful, beautiful evening. Speaking of fall, that word, what do you call this time of year? I have recently found myself beginning to call this time of year autumn. I guess I do like to be different. So we got those two words, autumn, from the Latin autumnus, which is probably from the Etruscan, probably from a word that has something to do with ripening or maturing, which makes sense since, that is the time of the harvest, particularly the final harvest before the winter. And then fall. Now, from what I'm seeing online, particularly people not from the United States that seem to always be asking us, hey, what's up with you guys calling this time of year fall? So apparently it's an American thing, or has at least become primarily an American thing. But
it was originally English, it was.
That was a truly horrible accent. Primarily an American thing, but it comes from a phrase, just like when you were a kid and you learned, fall is when the leaves fall. Well, it does literally come from the phrase, fall of the leaf. So I believe that was from the 1500s that they were saying that. So just a shortening of a phrase. So those two terms, autumn and fall, basically referring to the same thing. Well, they are referring to the same thing, not just basically, but with a slight different nuance in meaning to them. There are two other words that are referring to the same thing, but with a slightly different nuance of meaning, yet they are, once again, they're synonymous, they are interchangeable, just kind of look at a little bit different aspect of that one thing. Those two words are disciple and Christian. Acts 11:26, where you have the church at Antioch and those disciples. Now you see three terms that are used interchangeably in this verse. That church at Antioch, and you have those disciples that make up that church. They're called Christians. Three terms used to talk about the same group. That not only shows us when the term Christian was introduced, but it also reminds us that a Christian is a disciple. You put that IAN ending on the word Christ, and it basically is saying a follower of Christ. You could use that ending to indicate relationships between different things. And in this case, it's talking about a disciple-teacher relationship. Christ said for us to take his yoke upon us and learn from him. See, a Christian is a disciple. That word, we've forgotten what that word means. We hear disciple and we automatically think apostle. Well, all the apostles, all 14 men that ever held that position, because of course, Judas, he committed suicide and Matthias took his place. And then of course, Saul, later named Paul, was added. All those men were disciples, but most disciples are not apostles. So that's how that works. So all apostles were disciples, but not all disciples were apostles. A disciple, that word from the Greek mathetes, the Hebrew talmid, means a student of, but it's not a student in the modern sense. Like, it's not somebody that is going to a classroom somewhere and sitting for an hour and halfway taking notes and learning enough to pass the test. No, this is somebody that would spend great amounts of time with their teacher, with their rabbi, to learn as much as they possibly could from him, to the point where they would become their rabbi. They would become just like him. So a disciple, not just a learner, but a follower, an imitator. See, all these things sound familiar to our concept of Christian that we've heard over the years, but for whatever reason, oftentimes we've not connected the two terms. So remember, two terms, interchangeable. We need to be using them both. If you're a Christian, you're a disciple. You're not just a follower, you're a learner, so you can become just like the master teacher, the Christ. And on following him, the disciple life, we're going to be looking at so many different things that are involved with that, and also looking at, as the years go on, Lord willing, many different topics that we want to know as a disciple of the Messiah. How do I approach this? What do I do with this? So there's going to be all sorts of things we're talking about on here, but it starts with understanding, of course, ultimately that Jesus is the Christ, and we're supposed to be his disciple. Be a Christian, be a disciple. Lord willing, talk to you again soon.